The weight of survival. The parlor at Dr. Harrison's house smelled of gun smoke and blood, despite Mrs. Brennan's efforts with vinegar water and open windows. Dawn light crept through the curtains, gray and cold, revealing the damage: splintered doorframe where Cross had forced entry, bullet holes in the kitchen wall, dark stains on the floorboards that wouldn't come out no matter how hard anyone scrubbed. Sarah sat in the corner chair, where she'd been since the shooting ended 3 hours ago. Her hands rested in her lap, motionless. She hadn't spoken since Constable Morrison led Jack Delaney's trail away into Medicine Hat's dark streets. The rifle that had killed William Cross leaned against the wall beside her, cleaned and reloaded by Daniel's careful hands. James watched his daughter from across the room, his wounded side a dull ache that he barely noticed anymore. Eleanor sat beside Thomas on the settee, the boy finally asleep against her shoulder after crying himself exhausted. Daniel stood at the window, maintaining watch, though 2 mounted police constables patrolled outside. Everyone was too wired to sleep, too aware that somewhere in the pre-dawn darkness, a wounded professional killer was still hunting them. "She needs to talk about it," Eleanor said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, so as not to wake Thomas. "Keeping it inside will poison her." "I know." James rose, ignoring the protest from his healing wound, and crossed to where Sarah sat. He lowered himself into the chair beside her, moving like an old man though he was only 42. "Sarah?" She didn't look at him. Her eyes remained fixed on something only she could see. Probably the moment Cross had come through that kitchen window, gun raised toward Eleanor. The moment Sarah had pulled the trigger. "Twice. You saved your mother's life," James said. "You saved all of us." "I killed a man." Sarah's voice was flat, empty of inflection. "I shot him in the chest. Then I shot him again to make sure he was dead. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel anything." "Good." The word came out harsher than James intended. He softened his tone. "If you'd hesitated, we'd be burying your mother today instead of—" He stopped. "Instead of what? Celebrating?" They'd won nothing except another day of survival. "William Cross," Sarah said. That was his name. Constable Morrison said he had a record in Chicago. Bank robberies. 3 murders they could prove. He was 35 years old. She finally turned to look at James, and her eyes were ancient. "Do you think he had a family? Someone who'll miss him?" "Does it matter?" James asked. "It should, shouldn't it? If I'm going to kill someone, shouldn't it matter who they were? He came here to murder us all. He would have killed your mother without blinking, killed Thomas, killed you." James reached for Sarah's hand, found it cold despite the room's warmth. "You did what had to be done, like you did." Sarah's gaze drifted to where Constable Fletcher's blood had been scrubbed from the floor. "Like Daniel did. Like all of us have done, over and over, because we found silver in the ground and powerful men wanted to take it from us." She pulled her hand away. "When does it end, Papa? When do we stop having to kill people just to keep what's ours?" James had no answer. The question had been haunting him since Robert Kane's death, since Cornelius Blackwood's confession, since every violent confrontation that had brought them to this blood-soaked dawn. Thomas Garrett's evidence might end it. The consortium's leaders will face trial, real justice. And if they're acquitted, if their money and connections shield them like Edmund Whitmore said they would? Sarah stood abruptly, moving to the window where Daniel stepped aside to give her space. "Then we'll have killed all these men for nothing. Cross, the others last week. Everyone who's died because of that damned mine." "Not for nothing," Eleanor said from the settee, her voice fierce despite its softness. "For survival, for family, for the right to keep what we've built." She adjusted Thomas's weight against her shoulder. "Look at your brother. He's 11 years old and he's seen more violence than any child should. But he's alive. We're all alive because we fought back." Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold window glass. "I used to dream about teaching school. Remember? Back in Ontario, I'd imagine standing in front of a classroom helping children learn to read." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Now I dream about men coming through windows with guns. I wake up reaching for a rifle." "You can still teach," James said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "When this is over. When it's over, I'll be a woman who killed 2 men before she turned 20. Sarah turned from the window. "What school board will hire me? What parents will trust their children to someone who's taken lives? The truth of it settled over the room like a shroud. They'd survived, but survival had cost them pieces of themselves that could never be recovered. James thought of the man he'd been 3 years ago, arriving on the prairie with dreams of building something good. That man was dead, killed by the same forces that had sent Cross and Delaney. Mrs. Brennan appeared in the doorway, her sturdy frame blocking most of the light from the hall. "I've made breakfast," she announced in her practical Irish accent. "You'll eat whether you're hungry or not. Can't fight on empty stomachs, and there's still fighting to be done." No one argued. They filed into the kitchen, carefully avoiding the broken window that Dr. Harrison had boarded over, and sat around the table like survivors of a shipwreck. Mrs. Brennan served eggs and bacon, bread and butter, coffee strong enough to strip paint. The food was excellent, and James tasted none of it. Daniel sat beside Sarah, close enough that their shoulders touched. He hadn't left her side since the shooting, a silent presence that seemed to steady her more than any words could. James watched them and felt a complicated mix of gratitude and grief. His daughter had found someone who understood what she'd become, what they'd all become. But she'd had to become a killer to find that understanding. The kitchen door opened and Sergeant Morrison entered, his red serge uniform dusty from the manhunt. His face was grim. "We lost Delaney's trail near the rail yard. Too many tracks, too much confusion. He could have caught the eastbound freight that left at 5, or he might be holed up somewhere in town." He accepted the coffee Mrs. Brennan poured him. "I've got men watching the train station, the livery stables, every road out of Medicine Hat. If he's still here, we'll find him." "And if he caught that freight?" Eleanor asked. "Then he's headed back to wherever the consortium sent him from. Chicago, most likely." Morrison drank his coffee in one long swallow. "Either way, you need to be careful. Professional killers don't like leaving jobs unfinished. Even wounded, Delaney's dangerous." "The depositions," James said. "We're supposed to give them at 2 o'clock. I'll have 4 constables escort you to the courthouse and back. The prosecutor needs your testimony to complete his case against the consortium leadership." Morrison set down his cup. "Ashford, Pemberton, Whitfield, Carver. They're already mobilizing their lawyers. Newspapers Carver doesn't control are running stories about last night's attack. Public sentiment is turning against them, but they're rich men with powerful friends. This fight's just beginning." "It's always just beginning," Sarah said quietly. "It never actually ends." Morrison studied her with something like sympathy. "I've been a Mountie for 12 years, seen a lot of violence, a lot of good people forced to do hard things. What you did last night, saving your mother, stopping Cross, that took courage." "It took a rifle and no hesitation," Sarah replied. "I'm not sure that's the same thing as courage." "It is when you're protecting the people you love." Morrison stood. "Get some rest if you can. I'll be back at noon to escort you to the courthouse." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't hesitate. The territory needs people like you, people willing to stand against the kind of evil the consortium represents." After he left, the silence returned. Thomas woke and ate mechanically, his young face showing a weariness that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Dr. Harrison emerged from his surgery where he'd been tending Constable Fletcher's shoulder wound, reported the constable would recover fully, then retreated to his study with barely a word. Everyone was processing trauma in their own way, trying to find solid ground in a world that kept shifting beneath their feet. James helped Mrs. Brennan clear the breakfast dishes, needing something to do with his hands. Through the kitchen window, the one Cross hadn't broken, he could see Medicine Hat waking to the news of last night's violence. People gathered in small groups on the street, pointing toward Dr. Harrison's house, talking in hushed voices. Some looked sympathetic, others looked afraid, as if proximity to the Mackenzies might mark them as targets too. "They're scared," Mrs. Brennan said, following his gaze. "Can't blame them. Consortium sent killers once, might send them again. People who helped you might be wondering if they'll be next." "We never asked anyone to risk themselves for us," James said. "Didn't have to ask. That's what neighbors do on the frontier, help each other survive." She scrubbed a plate with unnecessary force. "But survival's getting expensive. Peter Reed lost his home. Others lost sleep and safety. Now they're wondering what else they might lose. The weight of it pressed down on James's shoulders. Every person who'd helped them had become a potential target. Henry Walsh and Margaret Fletcher, who'd provided the bridge loan. Johann Schmidt and the other homesteaders who'd guarded the mine. Dr. Harrison, who'd given them shelter. Even Thomas Garrett, whose investigation had made him a threat to powerful men. "We should leave," James said suddenly. "Take whatever money we can get for the mine and go somewhere the consortium can't find us." "You won't, though." Mrs. Brennan set the clean plate in the rack. "You'll stay and fight because that's who you've become, and because running would mean they win." She was right, and James hated it. Hated that he'd been transformed from a man who wanted only to build a good life for his family into someone who measured success by survival. Hated that his children had been forced to become harder, colder, more capable of violence than any child should be. Hated that his wife had learned to sleep with a rifle beside the bed and wake at the smallest sound. But Mrs. Brennan was right about something else, too. They wouldn't run. Couldn't run. Not after everything they'd sacrificed to get here. Eleanor found him in the kitchen an hour later after Thomas had been settled upstairs with a book he wasn't reading. She slipped her arms around James from behind, resting her head against his back. They stood that way for a long moment, drawing strength from each other's presence. "Sarah's sleeping," Eleanor said. "Finally, Daniel's watching her door. She'll have nightmares. We all will. We all do." Eleanor's grip tightened. "But we're alive to have them. That counts for something." James turned in her arms, looking down at the woman he'd brought to this harsh land with promises of a better life. Her face showed the strain of the past months, new lines around her eyes, gray threading through her dark hair, a hardness in her jaw that hadn't been there in Ontario. But her eyes still held the determination that had made him fall in love with her 20 years ago. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of this, for bringing you here, for the danger, for what it's cost us." "Don't," Eleanor pressed a finger to his lips. "We made this choice together, every step of the way, together." She pulled his head down, kissed him gently. "We'll finish it together, too." The courthouse at 2:00 was surrounded by curious townspeople and 4 grim-faced mounted police constables. Sergeant Morrison led the Mackenzie family through the crowd, ignoring shouted questions from men James recognized as newspaper reporters. Inside, Thomas Garrett waited with stacks of documents and a court stenographer ready to record every word. The depositions took 3 hours. James spoke first, describing their arrival on the prairie, the discovery of the mine, every confrontation with Blackwood's men, and the consortium's killers. Eleanor went next, her testimony precise and damning, particularly regarding Edmund Whitmore's betrayal and the pattern of legal manipulation. Sarah went last, and her account of finding William Garrett's letter and Robert Kane's confession was delivered in the same flat, emotionless voice she'd used since the shooting. When she described killing Cross, the stenographer's pen paused. Sarah didn't. She recounted pulling the trigger, watching him fall, shooting him again to be certain. She described the lack of fear, the absence of hesitation, the cold efficiency of ending a life. Thomas Garrett listened without interruption, but James saw something flicker in the investigator's eyes, recognition, perhaps, of what violence did to people who survived it. "That's everything we need," Garrett said when Sarah finished. "This testimony, combined with the evidence from other territories, gives the prosecutor a solid case. The consortium's lawyers will fight hard, but they can't explain away the pattern. Multiple families, multiple territories, identical tactics. It points to coordination at the highest level." "When will the trial start?" Eleanor asked. "Months, possibly longer. Men like Ashford and Carver have resources to delay proceedings, file appeals, challenge every piece of evidence." Garrett gathered his papers. "But they will face justice. I promise you that." James wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the legal system would work, that powerful men would be held accountable, that all this violence had served some purpose beyond mere survival. But he'd seen too much corruption, too many people willing to look the other way when money changed hands. They left the courthouse as evening shadows stretched across Medicine Hat's streets. The crowd had dispersed, but James felt watched. Every window might hide someone working for the consortium. Every stranger might be another hired killer. Jack Delaney was still out there somewhere, wounded but dangerous, possibly planning his next move. Back at Dr. Harrison's house, Mrs. Brennan had supper waiting, roast chicken and vegetables, bread pudding for dessert. They ate in near silence, too exhausted for conversation. Thomas fell asleep at the table and had to be carried upstairs. Sarah excused herself early, Daniel following to keep watch outside her door. Eleanor and James sat in the parlor with Dr. Harrison, drinking whiskey that burned going down but brought no warmth. "How long will you need to stay here?" Dr. Harrison asked. "Not that I'm rushing you, but having us here puts you in danger," James finished. "We'll move back to the homestead tomorrow if the Mounties think it's safe." "The homestead's not safe," Eleanor said. "Nowhere is, as long as Delaney's alive and the consortium's free." "Then we make it safe." James drained his whiskey. "We hire guards, fortify the house, whatever it takes. We can't hide forever." Dr. Harrison refilled their glasses. "The whole town's talking about what happened. Some folks think you're heroes, standing up to Eastern money and corruption. Others think you're fools who should have taken whatever offer the consortium made and left peacefully." He paused. "I think you're both. Heroes and fools. That's what it takes to survive on this frontier." Later, lying in the guest room bed with Eleanor curled against his side, James stared at the ceiling and thought about Dr. Harrison's words. Heroes and fools. Maybe that was all any of them were. People trying to do the right thing in a world that punished righteousness and rewarded ruthlessness. "Are you awake?" Eleanor whispered. "Can't sleep." "Me neither." She shifted closer. "I keep thinking about Sarah, about what this has done to her. She's strong. She'll survive it. Surviving isn't the same as healing." Eleanor's voice caught. "She killed a man today, James. Our daughter killed a man, and she did it so efficiently, so coldly, that it frightened me." James had no comfort to offer. He'd seen the same thing, felt the same fear. Sarah had become exactly what the frontier demanded. Hard, capable, willing to do violence when necessary. But in becoming that, she'd lost something essential, something soft and hopeful that could never be recovered. "We'll help her through it," he said finally. "All of us, together." "Will we?" Eleanor asked. "Or will we just keep surviving, day after day, until there's nothing left of who we used to be?" The question hung in the darkness, unanswered and unanswerable. Outside, the mounted police constables changed watch, their boots crunching on frost-hardened ground. Somewhere in Medicine Hat, Jack Delaney was either fleeing or planning his return. In Toronto, the consortium's leaders were mobilizing lawyers and buying influence, preparing for the legal war ahead. And in Dr. Harrison's guest room, James Mackenzie held his wife and wondered if they'd won anything at all, or if they'd merely traded one kind of death for another, the quick death of a bullet for the slow death of becoming people they no longer recognized. Dawn would come soon, bringing new challenges and old fears. But for now, in the darkness, they had each other. On the frontier, James thought, sometimes that had to be enough.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.